the Roach family basement. Today we are talking to a very special person, a very good friend of mine. Her name is Eleanor Roach, and she is my grandmother. Oh, this is December 24th, 1994. What am I supposed to ask? Am I supposed to ask something?
You paused.
Did you pause it? Dude, it's still going. So, Grandma, where were you born?
I was born in Elgin, Ontario, about 35 miles from Kingston, in 1911 on a cold November day, November the 14th.
Wow. You were born in 1911, so that would make you 83 this year.
Yes, I had my birthday in November. All the family came.
So how long did you live in Elgin?
Well, until I was 12, I was sent away to boarding school as there was no high school here. And I finished the lower grade school at 12 years old, and my mother wanted me in a safe place, so I was sent to the Notre Dame Convent boarding school in Kingston.
Wow, you were young to be starting high school.
Yes, I was the youngest in my class, and all my friends were about a year or two older.
Really? Only a year or two?
Hi, Mom. Tell me a little bit about your parents and what it was like growing up in Elgin.
I have a lot of memories. I was the only girl for quite a while, so I spent sort of lonely times. My brothers would be doing all kinds of things outside, sports and that, and I spent my time making dolls' clothes and playing by myself.
What about the animals on the farm?
Yes, we had, it was a small farm. My dad had a lot of work to do because he didn't have much machinery or anything. We had cattle, horses, pigs, chickens, turkeys.
What were some of the first memories that you remember from growing up on the farm? What was your very first memory of the farm?
I liked the horses very much. I do remember my mother and dad were working at the barn and milking the cows, and my brother, 4 years old, and I was 2, decided to take me for a ride in his wagon. He put the high chair on the wagon and put me in it and took me for a merry ride. I had a broken arm at 2 years old.
Oh my goodness.
What was it like growing up, though? What were your happiest thoughts of the farm when you were in grade school?
In grade school. I was very happy. I enjoyed school, and the teacher stayed with us quite a lot. I went through the grades very fast. You were allowed to learn at your own pace. So at 11 years old, the teacher asked my mother if I could write the high school examinations, and Mom said, no, she's just a child. I refused. So the following year, I remember the day the teacher left us doing work at the schoolyard and went up and begged my mother to let me try it at 12 years old. So I went, and then there was no high school around to go to. And my mom, I was the only girl at that time, and she thought her daughter should have the best, so she sacrificed a lot to send me to convent.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
5 brothers and 1 sister.
And where did you fit in the hierarchy of the family?
Yeah, I'm second eldest. My brother Jack was 2 years older.
Tell us about Jack.
Oh, he was great. He, when he became a teenager, he finished his high school, and he didn't want to go on to school, so he took work on the Canada steamship lines. So he traveled up to Lake Superior and back. And when I was at Notre Dame, he would come in from the ship at the foot of Johnson Street and come up to visit me. And when my graduation time came, he saved his money and gave money to my mom to make my graduation dress, to buy me shoes, to get my hair curled, and he brought me a wristwatch, the first I'd had.
How much older was Jack than you were?
2 years
2 years older? So he was born in
1909,
1909.
and
1909.
I was 1911.
How old was Jack when he left home?
18.
So I understand that you left home when you were just 12 or
12,
13 years
right.
old to go away to a boarding school in Kingston.
Right.
What about your younger brothers? Who was next?
Edward, Arthur, Jim. And then when I went to boarding school in 1924, Catherine, my only sister, was born in November that year.
Tell us about Edward.
Edward was a very clever brother. He went through high school with honors and so on, but he didn't know that he could apply for scholarships in those times. So he didn't have any prospects of getting away to college. By that time, 1935, my husband realized the situation. He said, what a waste to have Edward stay at home. So we went down there one weekend, and he persuaded him to come back and stay with us and take a business course with the hope of getting into Bell Telephone or government. So he came up and stayed 2 years with us, and he got a job in the government, for which turned out to be a wonderful farm. Then he went overseas and came back in the government. He's now retired, living in Ottawa.
What year did he leave to go overseas?
When the war started, 1939, 40.
And the next brother was Art?
Art. He worked on the railway in Elgin after high school, and then he got a job in the post office. He retired from post office work.
And when was Art born?
2 years after Ed, what was Ed, 1914? Yes, and Art 1960. And Jim was 1920.
Jim was born in 1920?
1920. In 1922, we had a little brother who was born on the farm with not much help. The doctor was there alone. My dad came upstairs and got me to help what the little boy needed, an incubator or some help, and my brother died. That was an evening or morning that I grew up very fast. My mother my mother was in bed after the new baby, and the little brothers all came downstairs wanting to know what was going on. Mom explained to them what happened and asked me to hold the little brother at the window for them to see. I was only 11, and that was quite an experience.
And your next brother then would have been Bill, or was Catherine born?
No, Catherine was born the year I went to boarding school.
What year was that?
24. And Bill was born in 26. I was in third year high.
Tell us about your parents. What are your thoughts about your father?
Oh, I just loved him dearly. He taught us so much, too. He was always showing us things. He didn't waste a moment with us. He took us out, told us about the different alternating crops in the field, about the animals. We learned the breeds of cattle and horses and all kinds of things like that. He was always teaching us.
What are your happiest thoughts of your father?
Of him teaching us to sing, teaching us to play cards. Even when he was tired in the evening, he spent all his evenings with us like that.
What was he involved in outside of raising the children?
Not much. He was a family man. He enjoyed playing cards with some of his friends. Mother would put on the party for him. That's about his only outside. He plays baseball till he was in his 40s.
And your mother, what kind of woman was she?
She had a lonely upbringing. Her mom died when she was only 2 years old. She was taken care of by an old aunt. And she had a chance to go to the convent in Westport, and she was so lonely, having never been away from home, that she didn't continue. But she educated herself by reading and so on. I remember how very clever she was, that she could stand up at a gathering of the Catholic Women's League and give a talk and things like that. She learned that herself.
Describe one of your happiest family times with your family on the farm.
Christmas time, I think.
Why?
Oh, I remember Dad surprising us with a record player. You know, we had nothing like that except he played the mouth organ for us up till then. One Christmas he secretly bought this record player, and we didn't know. He set it up in the evening, and in the morning, when we were still in bed, about 7 in the morning, Christmas Day, we heard this beautiful Hawaiian music and had no idea where it was coming from. And that surprise was really something.
What about when you're going to school living at the farm, who were some of your friends?
Mostly Hamiltons. There were two brothers of my dad's that lived within a mile, and the children were all great pals. They were cousins. There were 9 and 8, 24 children in 3 houses. And we got together, some of all our ages, and we spent much time together.
You'd say you're a close-knit Hamilton clan?
Oh yeah, we still are. It's carried on right from then.
What about some of the teachers that taught you in elementary school?
Oh, one of my great experiences was a teacher took me home to Westport, which was only 12 miles away, but I'd never been away from home, and she took me home with her for a weekend. And that was really something.
What was her name?
Ida Mulville.
What influence did she have on you?
Well, being in a country school, it was difficult. We didn't get too much attention each person. There were 20-some pupils in all grades. So, but she was very good. When I finished school, it was a Carty. Bessie Carty was my teacher. She was very good too.
Well, thanks for the thoughts on growing up on the farm. I'm going to come back and ask you some questions about when you went away to high school. So we'll come back to that a little bit later.
Fine.
Well, before we get into part 2 of the interview with Grandma about her life in school and her teenagerhood and everything, we just want to ask you, Grandma, a little bit more about the Christmases that you had on the farm as a little girl growing up.
Christmas was a great event. We looked forward to it for a long time. We didn't have any way of going shopping. We made each other's gifts as much as we could. And I remember when I was away at boarding school, my mother and dad brought the boys to Kingston to shop, and each one had $1 allowance to spend. And there was a Wilco store, or Woolworth store at that time there. And I took each one of them around and helped them buy a gift for each other with the $1. It's hard to believe now when you think of the prices of things, but they were able to buy, well, perhaps a comb or a fancy pencil or something, a toy of some type for the younger ones. And that's all we had. And then when we went home, I had to take them separately and tie up these gifts, which meant as much to them as the expensive things now. Treasure. And we always had a tree just from our own woods. We cut the tree. And we never had a stand for it, so frequently it fell over. And that was always quite a tragedy, get the decorations. We made all the decorations. We strung popcorn and cranberries and anything we could make with paper. I enjoyed artistic things even then when I was little, so I get the boys together. I still didn't have a sister then until I was 13. So we made tissue paper rings and chains and decorated the tree. Never had any things that were bought.
Describe the happiest Christmas that you had.
The year before I was married, my boyfriend came for Christmas, and we had a lovely time because the family all loved him, and we had a great Christmas. He helped put up the tree and decorate it, fit it into the family.
Well, before we get on to the boyfriend, let's talk about your going away to high school. How did that come about?
Well, my mother, I was the only daughter, and she wanted the best for me, of course. She had been given a little money from her dad when he died, so instead of using it for many things they needed on the farm, she sacrificed and used it to send me. It's unbelievable that the fees at the school were only $24 a month, and that included my room and board.
Oh my God.
So that's $6 a week.
Wow.
And that was very difficult in those times to have that much money to pay it.
Wow.
My dad paid the spring months with maple syrup, and I had 50 cents a month allowance, and got home just on holiday time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, even though I was just 35 miles away. It was difficult. They didn't have a very good car and so on, so I just got home on special occasions. It was rather lonely. It was wonderful going home to see my new baby sister that year. That was a nice Christmas present. She was born on November the 12th, near my own birthday. And the sisters let me have a little birthday party in the dining room after school. And Mom somehow had sent a cake to Kingston, a birthday cake for me. And the superior of the convent brought a letter to me and said, "You have some special mail today." And I opened it, and it was that I had had a new baby sister.
What was the high school, like the convent, actually like?
Beautiful, really. Now I realize how wonderful it was and good for me. I was lonesome at first, but I met friends who are still my friends now after 70 years.
Wow.
They're still living, and we've been very close pals all these years. But we began there in the grade 9.
How did you first meet these friends, and who were they?
Well, when my parents left to go home, I remember feeling very sad. It was raining, and they all got in the car and drove away. And I was looking out double glass doors and felt that I was almost shut away from them forever. I was very lonely. But one girl was appointed to be sort of a senior for me, and she helped me unpack and get settled in the dormitory. She's still living in Providence Manor in Kingston.
And who's that?
Madeline McCauley. And her sister was in my grade at school, so we have became friends then, and we still are.
And her sister is?
Frances McCauley.
Who are some of the other friends that you had during
Marjorie
high school?
Quinn from Belleville, still a friend. We phone each other every 2 weeks, visit whenever we can, and this past summer I had a reunion of 6 of us who are friends of 70 years.
Who were those 6? There was Frances McCauley.
Frances McCauley, Marjorie Quinn, Drita Callahan, Drita Quinn now, her name is, and Fidelis Fowler from New York, and this one, Mary Egan from Toronto. 6 of us. I had a party for them, and then Frances had another in at the Manor.
Did you have any boyfriends during high school?
No, not really.
Why is that?
Well, we were there. We weren't out at all. You couldn't go out in the evenings or anything. We would meet for sports for the Ricci crowd or so on. And I remember when we went for walks after 4, we took a walk all in together, just like soldiers walking. And we would, the leaders, when I got up in the senior grades and was one of the leaders, we'd try to get around through Queens to meet the Queen students. That was fun.
What one thing did you do during high school that the sisters never found out about?
Oh, I don't think there was much. We'd leave the playground and slip over to a grocery store where Mr. O'Connor knew us, and we'd collect what money we had. My allowance was 50 cents, and most of the girls didn't have much either. And he'd give us a huge bag of chocolate marshmallow cookies for the quarter. Didn't matter. And that was fun. We'd go back and be scolded and punished for going that far over the corner.
Who was your most influential or the most admired teacher that you had during high school?
Sister St. Dominica, who was really a lovely lady and very clever, and she encouraged us.
Why is that?
I don't know. She was just a different personality, and we liked her the best.
Describe the most happiest time at the high school.
I think the graduation time, we had a concert, and we depicted all different ways of life in this pageant. And I was chosen that I would be a mother. And I was on the stage with a baby in a cradle, and I sang Brahms' Lullaby. All during the convent, I sang a lot. I was leader in the choir. I sang in St. Mary's Cathedral, big one there. Took piano lessons. Frequently, the music teacher would come to my dormitory at 6 in the morning and say, "Get ready, I want to practice a song before Mass time." So a lot of my extra time was spent with music.
Who taught you how to play the piano?
Sister St. George. She's a very clever lady.
Why did you choose the piano as an instrument to learn?
My mom wanted me to learn the piano. She had one. They had one at home. But all I was allowed during my lessons to play classical, so I didn't really use it much. I was in many concerts. At one time I played on a baby grand with a partner, and there were 3 other pianos. So that was 8 good girls playing together. Quite an accomplishment, I think.
Did you have a piano on the farm growing up?
Yes, there was.
Who played it?
I did a little bit. My mom knew a few pieces by heart. She had never had any lessons, but she could play a few songs. Dad could play the violin a little bit, but not much. He played the mouth organ very well.
How many homes did you live in when you were growing up on the farm?
I just lived in the first farm that my parents had, and then I went to the convent. And the year after that, they moved to a larger stone home near town, a bigger farm. And so I was never back to stay at the original one.
After graduation from high school, I understand you went on to teacher's college. How did that come about?
Oh, I was telling Kathy that. I came home in June and was just helping around the summer, and my Aunt Ursula, my mother's sister, came from Perth to visit. And she said to me, "What are you going to do now, dear?" She said, "You've passed with honors. What are you going to do?" And I said, "I really don't know what to do." And she said, "What would you like?" And I said, "All my life I've wished to be a teacher. I like children and I'd like to be a teacher." She said, "I will send you." And that was it. She paid my way to Ottawa Teachers College.
How many years did that take?
One only then, because I had my 5 years high school. So at that time, all you needed was one more year. You didn't need your college.
But tell me about your first job after graduation.
I went far from home down to Glengarry County. I had to travel from Elgin to Ottawa, change trains, and go to Glengarry County. That was among Scotch and French people, very lovely people. I stayed with the Scotch family, McKinnons, and walked to school. And I had a mixture in the school, about 28 pupils, I think it was, and a lot of them were French, but all the examinations had to be done in English. So from grade 1 up, you had to teach them their English properly so they could write the high school entrance examination in grade 8. So that was difficult. And the little ones, 5 years old, would come having no English at all. You had to teach by the objects around the room and sort of like that. It was really difficult to have time for all the children.
So, how did you meet my grandfather?
Well, he was a friend of one of the young men that lived where I boarded. And this Hugh McKinnon was getting married the end of September. And he was going down to see his girlfriend one night, and he said, "Come with me." I said, "Oh, I better not. She might not like that very well." We joked about it. He said, "There's somebody I want you to meet." So we went down, and he took me to the Bell telephone office where his girlfriend worked as a switchboard operator. And sitting in there chatting to her was Leslie Roach. So he introduced us, and 2 weeks later, this wedding was on, and I was just closing school in the afternoon when a car drove up, and it was the friends of the bride and groom, and Les was with them, and took me back to the house where we had a party and danced at the bride's house. That was the beginning.
What attracted you to Les?
His gentleness, kindness to people, popular with all the other young people around. And I don't know, it just was meant to be. My dad wrote a letter. Apparently I would write letters home and include his name in quite a few occasions. So I got a letter from my dad saying, "Who is this Les fellow? Bring him up till I look him over."
How old were you when you met?
18, 19.
You were only 19
I
years
just turned
old.
19 in November.
And how old was he?
He was 6 years older, 24.
And what was he doing at the time?
Bell Telephone, the youngest foreman in Eastern Ontario.
So when did you decide that this was the man you were going to marry?
The next spring. I can remember we went for a walk at the farm and were sitting on a log. And we decided then that we were meant for each other, so he gave me a promise ring, which I still have, with my birthstone. But we didn't become engaged for 5 years after. I went on teaching, and the Bell had a sort of a slow time and moved people around. He had to take a little demotion to keep the job, so we postponed being married until we could, 1935.
When did you get married?
1935, June.
Tell us about the first years of being married.
Well, we traveled around quite a lot. He was moved from place to place.
Where were some of those places?
We had an apartment in Kingston first, a furnished apartment. There was a young minister and his wife wanted to go down east for a year, and they wanted someone in who would take care of their precious things. They had a lovely place. We stayed there, and then he was in Napanee. I went up there and stayed a little while. We stayed in a boarding home there. And then we found an apartment on University Avenue in Kingston and moved there. And we had saved up what we could in that time, and got an unfurnished little duplex. And we went to the store in Kingston. With our $500, we furnished the house completely. Dining room suite, kitchen set, living room set. And we looked at a rug and couldn't pay for it, so we left that for about 6 months. We went back to the store, and the manager had it rolled up in a corner. He says, "I knew you'd be back for it."
Were you teaching at the time in the
Oh,
first
no,
years of
I
marriage?
didn't do, no, I didn't. Les didn't want me to. I should have. Now, when I think much easier it would have been, but he didn't want me to. And see, I had my first little daughter 14 months after I was married. And she died, of course, so that left me alone quite a while. I could have gone to work, but at that time, the attitude was, no, my wife doesn't need to work, you know. And then I had Anne, another daughter, the next year. And then we moved to Ottawa.
Tell us about your children.
As of now or then?
Back then, as they came.
Well, Anne was the first little one. I lived across the street from a lady who had 11 children, and she used to watch the way I took care of this one, you know, so fussy and dressing her up all the time. And I would look across at her and think, how does she have 13 people for 3 meals a day? And so on. She was a sweet lady.
Describe your children as they came. What years were they born?
Well, Anne was 1937, and in 1939 I lost a baby boy full term. And in 1940, was it 40 was the next one? I have to stop and think. I'm losing the years. Let me see, 37, 39 I lost one, 41 I had Jean. We had then moved to down to Quebec, Montreal, Quebec. Verdun first, and then Granby, and then Shirley. And in Granby, I had Terry, Dave, and Pat.
What years were they born in?
46 and 50 and 51.
Describe the feeling you had when you first held Anne after she was born.
Oh, it was wonderful because they told me she was perfectly healthy. And that was a great reward after losing my first one. To lose the first child is very traumatic because you're built up on that story.
What was family life like as the kids were growing up? What was Dad doing at the time? Describe some of the evenings you spent together, some of the fun times that you had, maybe even before you had children or after you had the children. What was married life like back then?
Oh, really nice. We didn't have much. One thing that we thought was a wonderful experience was to go downtown and, say, buy a box of chocolates and enjoy it on Sunday. You know, trivial little things that people wouldn't be happy doing that now. We couldn't go to shows.
Well, Mom, we're back again. And we were just telling us about family life and what it was like and things like that. Why don't you tell us again, as you had the children, some of the characteristics of the kids as they were growing up? Like Anne, what was she like? Jean, they all had different personalities. Tell us your perspective of them.
Anne was quite a serious child, very advanced, talked early, sang songs at 2 years old, and so on, because she was with adults a lot. She was very mature. Jeannie was very lively type, loved outside, loved to play ball, active among a lot of friends. Terry, of course, had a very hard start. She was premature, weighed under 3 pounds, so she was held back a bit on account of that. But she got along okay. Around 7 years old, the doctor said she was perfectly normal. You know, had learned all that she should. And then you were a lively one, I tell you. After having 3 girls, it was a change to have a boy in the house. One thing I noticed particularly, that any motor or anything that was moving, you would dash the whole length of the house to hear it, whereas the girls never noticed. That was a difference in the boy child. And then Pat arrived a year and a half to the day, so you two were like twins, really. Taking care of you the same as twins when you're that close together. I enjoyed life in Granby. It was the nicest times we had, I think. 11 years there, very happy. And my husband was involved in many things. President of Kiwanis Club, started a golf club among the Bells, started a social club, and began an English mission church called St. Patrick's. And we were really busy. We put on Irish concerts every year. He would start in January and prepare a concert for March.
What was your happiest period of your married life?
I would say those 11 years were great. We were an age that we enjoyed everything. We bowled, you know, and had all these activities that we worked in for the community. I really enjoyed that.
What years did you live in Granby?
11.
From when?
From 1959, 1949, was it? I've got to think for a minute for the years. It's hard to. Anne was in training in Granby, let's see. forgotten what year we moved from Verdun. Must have been.
You left Granby in about 1958, didn't you?
Granby, we did move to Sherbrooke, but before that, you see, we were in Verdun until sometime in the 50s. We spent 11
Well, if
years.